There was a man who read the same book every single day for over 40 years, not because he had forgotten what was in it, not because he lacked access to newer material, but because he understood something that most people never grasp in a lifetime. That truth, repeated deeply enough, stops being information and becomes transformation. That man was Bob Proctor. Born into poverty in a small town in Ontario, Canada, Bob Proctor left school at 15 with no degree, no money, and no direction. At 26, he was broke, in debt, and going nowhere. He had tried and failed at nearly everything, and then someone handed him a book. Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. He read it once, then again. Within a year, he had built a cleaning business, generating over $175,000 in annual income. Within a few more years, it exceeded $1 million. What changed? Not his education, not his circumstances, not even his work ethic alone. What changed was his mind, specifically the deeper layer of his mind that most people never consciously touch. And the tool he used to change it was not a single breakthrough moment. It was not one inspired decision. It was repetition, deliberate, relentless, daily repetition of the ideas and images he wanted to become real in his life. Bob Proctor went on to become one of the most celebrated personal development teachers in the world. He appeared in the global phenomenon The Secret. He coached billionaires, celebrities, and world-class athletes. He built an empire of mind training programs and seminars. And until his passing in 2022, at 87 years old, he never stopped teaching. Because he never stopped learning, never stopped repeating, never stopped conditioning his mind to the frequency of abundance and possibility. His secret was not complicated, but it demanded discipline. It demanded faith. And above all, it demanded that you understand one fundamental truth. Your outer world is a reflection of your inner world, and your inner world can be deliberately shaped, one repetition at a time. This is the story of that principle, and it could change everything for you. Welcome to the teachings of Bob Proctor. If you have ever felt stuck, like you are doing all the right things but still not moving forward, this video may be the most important one you watch this year. Because what you are about to learn challenges the very foundation of how most people attempt to create change in their lives. Most of us believe that change happens through effort, through willpower, through forcing ourselves to do better, be better, try harder. We set goals, create plans, push through resistance, and yet find ourselves cycling back to the same results, the same habits, the same struggles. And we've wondered, what is wrong with me? Bob Proctor had a different diagnosis. Nothing is wrong with you, but something may be wrong with the approach. The real problem, Proctor taught, is that most people try to change their lives at the conscious level while their subconscious mind, which governs 95% of their behavior, remains completely untouched. You can think positive thoughts for an hour every morning and still carry a deep, invisible program of limitation that sabotages everything you try to build. The subconscious mind does not respond to logic. It does not respond to motivation speeches alone. It does not respond to a single powerful insight, no matter how true. The subconscious mind responds to repetition, to the steady, consistent impression of new ideas, new images, and new beliefs, pressed into it again and again until they replace the old programming that has been running silently in the background since childhood. This is not mystical. This is neuroscience. This is the science of habits. This is what Bob Proctor understood at 26 years old intuitively at first, and then with growing precision over 6 decades of study. In this video, we are going to explore his teachings on repetition in depth. We will walk through 7 essential chapters, covering everything from how the subconscious mind actually works, to the specific tools Proctor used and recommended to retrain it. By the end, you will not just understand the concept, you will have a blueprint for applying it. Let us. Bob Proctor often began his seminars with a diagram, a simple circle divided into 2 parts. The top half represented the conscious mind, the bottom half represented the subconscious mind. Between them was a boundary he called the terror barrier. And his entire life's work was aimed at helping people understand how to cross it. The conscious mind, Proctor explained, is the part of you that thinks, reasons, and it is the pod reading these words right now. It is capable of accepting or rejecting any idea. It is the gatekeeper, and most personal development work targets only this level. Which is why most personal development work produces only temporary results. The subconscious mind is something else entirely. It does not reason. It does not judge. It accepts whatever is impressed upon it repeatedly and acts on those impressions as truth. It runs like a program, and like any program, it produces predictable outputs based on its code. Proctor taught that most of our subconscious programming was established before the age of 7. At that age, children are operating largely in a theta brainwave state, a deeply receptive, hypnotic state in which information is absorbed without filtering. What we saw, heard, and experienced in those years became the foundational code of our identity. That code then runs for decades, often completely beneath the threshold of conscious awareness. We do not feel the program running. We simply experience its results as our income, our relationships, our health, our confidence. We look at our lives and think we are seeing our choices. What we are actually seeing in Larbart is our programming. This was the insight that electrified Bob Proctor when he first encountered it. He realized that his poverty was not a result of his circumstances. It was a result of his conditioning. And if conditioning had created the problem, conditioning could create the solution. Changing that conditioning required working at the level where it lived. The subconscious, and the primary mechanism for reaching the subconscious, Proctor learned, was not analysis or understanding. It was repetition, consistent, emotionally charged, faith-filled repetition of new ideas until they replaced the old ones. This is why Proctor read Think and Grow Rich every single day. He was not reviewing information. He was re-impressing it, driving it deeper, moving it from the level of intellectual knowledge down into the marrow of belief, where it could actually change behavior. Understanding the architecture of your mind is the first step. Once you see that there are two distinct levels at work, and that change must happen at the deeper level, everything else begins to make sense. The question stops being, why is change so hard? The question becomes, am I working at the right level? And if you have been frustrated by your lack of progress, the answer, more likely than not, is that you have not been. Bob Proctor had a word for the subconscious programming that governs our lives. He called it a paradigm, and he spent decades teaching people to understand, identify, and ultimately replace the paradigms holding them back. A paradigm, in Proctor's definition, is a multitude of habits, a collection of beliefs, behaviors, and mental patterns that operate automatically and shape every area of our lives. It is not just a single limiting thought. It is an entire system of conditioned responses that together create a gravitational field around our current level of results. Think of it this way. Your paradigm is like a thermostat. If the thermostat is set at 68 degrees and the room gets too hot, the system cools it down. If the room gets too cold, the system heats it up. No matter what you do to change the temperature manually, the thermostat pulls everything back to 60. This is why people who win the lottery are often broke again within a few years. Their external situation changed, but their paradigm, their internal thermostat, was still set to poverty. And so, invisibly but powerfully, it pulled their results back to its set point. This is why people lose weight and gain it back. Why businesses built on borrowed belief collapse when the mentor leaves. Why relationships improve temporarily during a honeymoon phase and then revert. The outer world resets to match the inner world, not the other way around. Proctor was unequivocal. You cannot permanently outperform your paradigm. You can have flashes of success above it, lucky breaks, inspired moments, exceptional effort, but without changing the paradigm itself, those flashes fade and you return to your baseline. The paradigm is changed through repetition, not through one powerful insight, not through a single weekend workshop, as valuable as that might be as a spark, but through the consistent, daily, disciplined re-impression of new ideas into the subconscious until they become the new normal. Proctor taught that this process takes time, typically a minimum of 30 days of intense focus, and often much longer for deeply rooted paradigms. He was not selling a quick fix. He was teaching a new way of living, a way of engaging with your own mind as consciously and deliberately as a gardener tends to their soil. Identifying your paradigm is illuminating. Look at your results, not your intentions, not your wishes, not the goals on your vision board. Your actual results. Your bank account, the quality of your most important relationships, your level of health and vitality. Those results are a mirror of your current paradigm. And once you see the paradigm clearly, once you name it, trace its origins, and understand how it has been shaping your life, you have something Proctor considered essential. A conscious target for change. Now you know exactly what needs to be replaced. Now the work of repetition has a clear direction. Most people have heard of affirmations. Many have tried them and given up, concluding they do not work. Bob Proctor would say, they were right, at least about how most people use them, and wrong about their potential when used correctly. The mistake, Proctor explained, is treating an affirmation as a statement of current fact. When someone deeply in debt repeats, "I am rich," there's an immediate conflict between the words and the deeply held belief. The conscious mind rejects it. The subconscious, already programmed to believe in scarcity, and the person feels foolish, or worse, reinforces their sense of failure when the words produce no change. Proctor drew a critical distinction. An affirmation is not a declaration of present reality. It is a direction of travel. It is an instruction to the subconscious about what to move toward. And used with that understanding, plus the essential ingredient of emotion, it becomes profoundly effective. The emotion is everything. The subconscious mind is not activated by words alone. It is activated by feeling, by the vibrational quality of genuine belief and desire behind the words. When you repeat an affirmation with true feeling, not performed enthusiasm, but genuine aspiration and expectation, you begin to impress that new idea into the deeper layers of mind. Proctor often recommended writing affirmations by hand, repeatedly, as a way of deepening the impression. He understood something that modern research on motor learning confirms. Writing activates different neural pathways than typing or reading. It creates a stronger, more embodied impression on the nervous system. He also taught that affirmations should be specific, positive, and stated in the present tense as much as possible. Not "I will be successful," but "I am in the process of attracting extraordinary abundance." The present tense framing creates a subtle but powerful shift in how the subconscious processes the instruction. Repetition frequency matters enormously. Proctor recommended multiple repetitions per day, morning, midday, and before sleep, when the mind is in a more receptive, relaxed state. The moments just before falling asleep and just after waking are particularly powerful, because in those twilight states, the conscious gatekeeping function is reduced and impressions go more directly to the subconscious. He also emphasized patience and persistence. The subconscious does not change overnight. It took years, sometimes decades, to build the current programming. Expecting it to reverse in a week is unrealistic, but expecting it to reverse with months of consistent daily effort is not just realistic, it is guaranteed, because this is how the mind works. One of Proctor's most famous affirmations, which he used personally for years, was a version of, "I am so happy and grateful now that money comes to me in increasing quantities through multiple sources on a continuous basis." Every element of that statement was intentional. The gratitude, the present tense framing, the specificity, the openness about the source. The affirmation is a tool. Like any tool, its power is in the skilled and consistent application. Done half-heartedly, it produces little. Done with discipline, emotion, and faith, it can literally rewire the subconscious. And when the subconscious changes, the outer world follows. Bob Proctor taught that the subconscious mind cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. This is not poetic metaphor. It is neurological fact. confirmed by decades of research in cognitive science and sports psychology, and it is the foundation of one of the most powerful tools he recommended: deliberate, emotionally charged visualization. Visualization, in Proctor's framework, is simply repetition conducted in images rather than words, while affirmations impress new ideas through language. Visualization impresses them through experience, through the felt sense of already living the reality you desire to create. When you visualize with genuine emotion, your brain responds as if the imagined event were real. Your nervous system fires the same patterns. Your body produces the same biochemical responses. Your emotional center, the limbic system, activates in the same way. And crucially, the subconscious, which processes images rather than logic, receives a new impression of what is real and possible for you. Proctor was precise about how to visualize effectively. He taught that you must do more than picture an outcome from the outside. Like watching a movie of yourself, you must step inside the image. See through your own eyes. Feel the textures. Hear the sounds. Breathe the air of the reality you are creating. Make it multisensory. Make it real in your body, not just in your head. He recommended a dedicated practice of at least 15 to 20 minutes per day, ideally in a quiet, relaxed state, perhaps in the morning or before sleep. During this time, you hold the image of your desired outcome with full emotional engagement, as if it is already real, as if it has already happened, as if you are already living it. Proctor often drew on the work of Dr. Joseph Murphy, Maxwell Moore, and other foundational thinkers who had studied the mechanics of this process in depth. Maltz, a plastic surgeon who became a pioneer in self-image psychology, documented how his patients' success depended less on their physical transformations than on their ability to update their mental self-image. And that mental self-image responded powerfully to visualization. The consistency of the practice is what produces the transformation. A single visualization session may leave you feeling inspired, but it will not change a paradigm. 30 days of daily visualization will begin to 90 days will begin to shift results you can measure in the physical world. Proctor described this process using the language of frequency and vibration ideas, drawn from quantum physics and the teachings of mentors like Leland Valvan de Waal. When you visualize your desired reality with emotional intensity, you begin to vibrate at the frequency of that reality. And according to the law of attraction, frequencies attract matching experiences. Whether you resonate with the metaphysical language or prefer the purely neurological explanation, the practical instruction is the same. Build a detailed, emotionally rich image of the life you desire and revisit it with complete presence and faith every single day without missing. Treat it as the most important appointment of your day, because in terms of building your future, it is. Proctor lived this practice. He did not merely teach it. For decades, he held a clear image of himself as a global teacher, reaching millions of people, changing lives around the world. He held that image before the evidence existed. He held it during setbacks and doubts, and he held it until his outer world had no choice but to match it. Bob Proctor did not recommend reading a life-changing book once and moving on. He recommended reading it daily, 4 months, 4 years. This was not a quirk of his personality. It was a deliberate strategy rooted in a sophisticated understanding of how the mind absorbs and integrates new information. There are 2 distinct modes of repetition that Proctor drew upon, and both are essential. The first is spaced repetition, the practice of returning 2 key ideas at regular intervals to deepen their impression and prevent them from fading. The second is saturated repetition, the practice of immersing yourself in the material so completely for a sustained period that it begins to reshape your default thinking. Spaced repetition works because of the way memory consolidates. Each time you return to a piece of information, especially with a gap between exposures, the neural pathways associated with that information are strengthened and deepened. What was once a surface-level concept gradually becomes a hardwired belief, something you do not have to consciously recall because it has become a natural part of your thinking. Saturated repetition works differently, but complementarily. When you immerse yourself in an idea, reading about it, listening to it, discussing it, writing about it, teaching it. You create a rich, multi-layered neural network around that idea. It becomes woven into your perception. You start to see evidence of it everywhere. You begin to instinctively act from its principles. Proctor used both. He read his core texts, Think and Grow Rich, The Science of Getting Rich, as a man thinketh, so many times that he could quote them from memory. But he did not stop at reading. He listened to recordings. He taught the material to others. He meditated on it. He wrote about it. He held study groups. He built his entire life around a small set of core principles, and he revisited them every single day. He taught his students to do the same. Do not spread your attention across 50 books and 10 programs. Pick one program, one set of core principles, and go deep. Repetition builds depth. Novelty builds surface, and it is depth, not breadth, that transforms a paradigm. Modern neuroscience offers a compelling framework for understanding why this works. The brain can literally change its physical structure in response to repeated thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Neurons that fire together wire together. New neural pathways form and strengthen with use. Old ones weaken from disuse. You are, quite literally, building a new brain. One repetition at a time. This is why Proctor could look at someone who had been through his programs multiple times and say, with absolute confidence, if you are not yet getting results, you have not yet done enough repetitions. Not because his programs were imperfect, but because the subconscious required a specific threshold of impression before it would release its old patterns. He compared it to planting seeds. You do not plant a seed in the morning and dig it up in the afternoon to check its progress. You plant it with faith. You water it consistently. You trust the process. And in time, without fail, without exception, the harvest appears. The natural world operates on this principle. So does the mind. If you are reading these words and wondering why you are not yet where you want to be, the answer may be simple. Not because you lack intelligence, ability, or potential, but because you have not yet done enough repetitions at the right level. The solution is not to find a better program. It is to go deeper into the one you already have. Bob Proctor was fond of quoting Hebrews 11:1. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. He quoted it not as a religious statement, but as a precise description of a mental and emotional state that is essential to the process of transformation through repetition. Faith, in Proctor's teaching, is not blind hope. It is not wishful thinking. It is a specific quality of belief, a settled, unwavering inner knowing that the outcome you desire is already real on the level of energy, even before it appears in physical form. It is the emotional condition that makes repetition powerful rather than mechanical. Without faith, repetition is empty. You can repeat an affirmation 1,000 times with skepticism and accomplish almost nothing. You can visualize daily with a nagging inner voice of doubt and find the visualization slides off without purchase. The subconscious is not fooled by performance. It responds to genuine belief, to the feeling tone behind the words and images. This is why Proctor placed so much emphasis on understanding the principles before practicing them. He wanted his students to reach a level of intellectual conviction so deep that it translated into genuine expectation. When you truly understand how the mind works, when you know, not just believe, that consistent repetition of an emotionally charged idea will change your paradigm. Faith becomes natural. You are not hoping, you are expecting. The feeling is the prayer. Proctor often said, borrowing from Neville Goddard, not the words, not the visual image alone, but the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the actual emotional experience of already having the thing you desire. That feeling, held consistently, is what impresses the subconscious most deeply. He taught that this feeling could be deliberately cultivated. Gratitude was one of the most powerful ways to access it. When you feel genuinely grateful for something, even something you do not yet have in physical form, but that you can imagine with clarity, you are already vibrating at the frequency of abundance, and abundance, on the level of energy, begins to move toward you. Proctor drew heavily on the work of Dr. David Hawkins, whose map of consciousness outlined a hierarchy of emotional states from shame and fear at the bottom, through courage, acceptance, and reason, all the way to love, joy, and enlightenment at the top. Higher emotional states, Hawkins argued, carried higher energetic frequencies, and Proctor taught that the practice of repetition was, in part, a practice of elevating your emotional baseline, moving from the frequency of lack to the frequency of abundance. This is why the most successful practitioners of Proctor's methods were not simply disciplined. They were inspired. They did not grind through their visualizations as a chore. They approached them with genuine joy and anticipation, as a child anticipates Christmas morning. The emotional quality of the repetition was inseparable from its effectiveness. If you find your practice feeling mechanical or hollow, Proctor would say, go back to the principles. Deepen your understanding until belief is natural. Find the feeling. Start with gratitude for what you already have. Let that gratitude expand outward toward the future you are creating. Let repetition become a ritual you look forward to because you know, with certainty, what it is building. Faith is not the beginning of the process. For most people, it is built through the process, through consistent repetition that begins to produce small shifts, which produce small evidence, which produces greater faith, which produces deeper repetition, which produces greater results. The spiral always moves upward, as long as you do not stop. Bob Proctor did not have a morning routine. He had a morning discipline. And there is an important difference. A routine is what you do when you feel like it. A discipline is what you do regardless, because you understand that consistency, not inspiration, is the engine of transformation. He was explicit about this. The people who transform their lives through the principles of repetition are not the ones who practice when they feel motivated. They are the ones who practice every day, especially on the days when they do not feel like it, especially on the days when the outer evidence contradicts the inner vision. Those are the days that matter most. Building a life of intentional repetition begins with structure. You need specific times and practices dedicated to the reprogramming of your subconscious, and those times need to be protected with the same seriousness you would protect a surgical procedure or a flight. Non-negotiable, immovable, sacred. Proctor recommended a minimum daily practice that included several elements. Study reading the core texts that contain the principles you are embedding. Affirmation, the spoken or written repetition of your specific goals and desired beliefs. Visualization, the emotionally immersive mental experience of your desired reality. And gratitude, the cultivation of the feeling frequency of abundance. He also emphasized the power of audio, recorded teachings, played during commutes, exercise, or household tasks, allowed for repetition even when focused study was not possible. Proctor himself listened to recordings daily. He understood that the ears are a direct pathway to the subconscious, to what we hear repeatedly, we eventually believe. Environment matters enormously. Proctor taught that you must curate the inputs your mind receives as carefully as you curate the food your body consumes. Chronic exposure to negative news, fearful conversations, and pessimistic people is a form of repetition. Negative repetition that continually reimpresses limiting beliefs. You cannot spend 8 hours per day bathing in scarcity consciousness and then expect 30 minutes of affirmations to overcome it. He encouraged his students to build what he called a prosperity consciousness environment, physical spaces, social circles, and media diets that reflected and reinforced the paradigm they were building. Books on abundance, mentors who modeled possibility, conversations oriented toward growth, images and words placed in the environment as constant, ambient reminders of the vision being built. Accountability was also a key component. Proctor built study groups, coaching relationships, and communities around these principles. because he knew that sharing your intentions with others who hold you to them dramatically increases your follow-through. Repetition practiced in community becomes self-reinforcing. Accountability creates the social pressure that supplements personal motivation on the inevitable days when motivation fails. Above all, Proctor taught patience and unwavering commitment. It was honest. Real paradigm change takes time, months, sometimes years, for deeply entrenched patterns. There will be days when nothing seems to be shifting, days when the outer world looks exactly the same as before you started. Those days are not evidence that the practice is not working. They are the days the seed is germinating beneath the surface, invisible but alive. The life you desire already exists as a possibility within you. It was placed there by the same creative intelligence that placed possibility in every seed. The practice of intentional repetition is simply the process of watering that seed consistently, faithfully, lovingly, until the day it breaks the surface and becomes undeniable. Bob Proctor proved it was possible. He dedicated his life to proving you could do it too. Bob Proctor once said, "Most people are not going anywhere. They have not decided to go anywhere." The decision to use repetition to transform your reality is, at its core, a decision to go somewhere, to stop allowing your subconscious programming to steer your life by default, and to begin steering it with intention. Everything we have covered in this video, the architecture of the mind, the power of paradigms, affirmations, visualization, spaced and saturated repetition, faith, feeling, and daily discipline, it's not a menu of options to pick from. It is a complete system. Each element supports and amplifies the others, and the fulcrum of the entire system is the same word that anchored Bob Proctor's entire life's work: repetition. If you take only one thing from this video, let it be this: start today, not tomorrow, not after you feel more ready or more convinced or more inspired. Today, pick one affirmation that resonates deeply with where you are going. Write it down 10 times. Say it out loud with emotion. Spend 5 minutes visualizing the life it represents. Do that tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Do not stop. Do not negotiate with your old paradigm. Do not let weeks go by without showing up for your future self, because every single repetition is a deposit in an account that will one day pay you everything you have ever dreamed of, and more.